So you'd like not to be playing Southampton this week?
Well, we've had two close games with them, I would suggest. Midweek, having not started too well in the first half, to be perfectly honest, and then going 2-0 down to any team at the level we play at is difficult. But obviously Southampton playing exceptionally well at the moment. But second half completely turned the game around and fully deserved to get back on level terms. And then unfortunately the game slipped away from us. Peter Crouch getting sent off and then almost immediately ball into our box and wasn't dealt with, and we lose the game 3-2. But we take the positives from it, because I thought second half we were outstanding. So that's the thought that we have in our mind, and that's the memory we have, so we can use that leading into the game. So hopefully it'll be a 90-minute performance rather than a 45 one.
Looking back, disappointed, frustrated, annoyed?
I was disappointed after the first half, because I felt we needed to do a lot better, and there wasn't that intensity that I expect from us, certainly from a game of the Britannia, but certainly in the second half, as I said, we turned that completely round, and it was more at the level that I expected to come from us from the beginning of the game. But as it was, we got into a good situation at 2-2, but we conceded through. But we're disappointed that we've gone out of competition that we'd hoped to progress to the latter stages, but we've got a big game at the weekend against another team in good form, scoring goals, so we'll have to be at our best as we were in the second half. We need to start well and then maintain it.
What did you say to Peter Crouch?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, I thought he was a little bit unlucky with the first yellow card, to be perfectly honest. I thought at best it was a foul. He certainly didn't merit a yellow card. Unfortunately, that's what he got. The second challenge was one that he shouldn't have gone into, because obviously with a yellow card just being given out to him, he knew he was at risk if he went into a challenge like that. So the second yellow card was correct. So he had to go. So that was disappointing, and he was disappointed obviously, and he apologised. But we move on. It's a loss obviously, because we miss him for this game, and he's done really well this season. But we'll have to just move things around and see what we do.
How do you assess the referees so far this season? I mean, there's a few managers come out and question some decisions or whatever, and year on year we seem to have ebbs and flows of decisions. Where do you rate them this season?
Well, I think it's truth be told. I think I wouldn't be the only manager that's been disappointed on occasions. I think that's fair to say, with the level of performance that is being produced. We ask sometimes for a little bit of clarity in terms of how decisions are being interpreted. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. The onus seems to be that we have to make inquiries rather than any change of approach to certain situations. Those aren't really communicated as well as they need to be, if at all. So that's a little bit of a frustration, but it's been very similar in previous seasons. So whether or not it's worse this year, it's a debating point, but you could argue that it probably hasn't been at the standard it needs to be in other years as well.
Given that they meet the referees at St George's Park every couple of weeks or whatever, do you think it'd be wise then to have a debrief with the managers afterwards if you wanted to speak to the referee and get clarity on them? Do you see any reason why you shouldn't after a game? Well,
I think that option is open to you as a manager, but some take up that option, but it's still very close at the end of the game. My view is that the whole game needs to be reviewed, certainly in terms of retrospective action or whatever. The whole game needs to be reviewed by the referee and his team immediately after the game, rather than waiting a couple of days to see what media outcry there is, and then someone who wasn't even at the game is asked to see whether or not decisions are right or wrong. So I think for the sake of an extra couple of hours at the end of a game, I think the whole referee in team on that day needs to stick around and review the game and see if there's any incidents that need to be looked at again. At the moment that's not the case. sometimes they've got pop concerts to go to, so maybe that's the reason they do want to do that.
Big fans of Ed Sheeran, aren't they? Other debating point this week is about grappling with defenders and attackers. Now, obviously, you'll probably appreciate it when your defenders do it, but as a forward yourself, has it always gone on? Is it something that you just won't eradicate?
Yeah, it's always gone on. I think I've said before. I think Ryan Shawcross has been unfairly singled out as the main culprit. He certainly isn't that. I see players time and time again, and it's happened for years, where they're holding on to attackers and vice versa. I was a striker myself, and I wasn't averse to holding onto defenders to gain advantage myself. But you have to ask, where does it stop? Do you say, well, that's cheating, which is a word that's been bandied around, which is a very emotive word, and I think which is a word that's been wrongly used in terms of how we go about our business. And I think if you're just going to highlight grappling, well, what about intentional blocks in the box to gain an advantage? Is that cheating? I know for a fact many clubs do that. Swansea do that. So you've got to ask yourself, are you going to stamp down on every misdemeanour in the box, or just on individuals holding onto opposition players and vice versa? So until we have clarity on that, it's difficult to know where we stand on it.
Is it still the situation where, of years gone by, when a manager has said to somebody, when you get out there, do a job on him, let him know you're there? Can you still do that now? Can a defender still...
Well, you can defend correctly, obviously. It's difficult, certainly in the box, and that's why I was a little bit perturbed, because my understanding at the beginning of the year was that the referees understood that it was a difficult situation, and it was very difficult for them to look at every incident that was going on in the box. So my interpretation of what they said was that if there's a genuine opportunity for somebody to head the ball into the net, then those are the ones they were going to pull up on if they were impeded under them circumstances. But that wasn't the case when Ryan was pulled up on it. It certainly was the case when I recall the Manchester United Chelsea situation. That certainly was an occasion where I felt, well, that merited penalty kicks being taken, but that wasn't the case. So there's inconsistency there, which is frustrating at the moment.
Big Sam last weekend. Is that about the best 60th birthday you can have? Would you wish again?
Yeah, they're doing very well. Yeah, playing exceptionally well, and changed the way of playing somewhat. But don't underestimate. They still have plan A and plan B. If they feel they need to go along, they will do, and they still have that option. It's not a bad option. Obviously, we use it as well, so it's not something to make apologies about. It works at the right time, but they've changed their shape somewhat, and it seems to be helping them. They've got good pace up front, and the lads they've brought in have made an immediate impact, scored goals. So that's what you want when you bring new players in. So it's gone really well for them, and they're playing with a lot of confidence. So it's another team that we'll have to match up in that regard, in terms of going up against a very, very confident side that's playing well at the moment.
Does it surprise you at the start of the season when Sam's one of the favourites in the betting states to get the sack, and then he shows what a wily old fox he can be? Well,
he's been doing it a long time. He understands this league, and he understands that, like I do, it's very short term. You're either great or you're very, very poor, and it's the period of time that people make that judgment is getting shorter and shorter every year. If you have a good start, you win a couple of games back to back, then you're flavour of the month. If you don't do that, then you get criticised, and that short-termism is damaging, I feel. People need to be allowed just to get on with their job, and at the end of the season get judged then. And more often than not, Sam has done an exceptional job at every club he's been at.
And many changes tomorrow? Any enforced?
Well, we've got enforced ones, obviously, with Peter and Bardo not being available through suspension. We've got ready-made replacement, obviously, with Jeff Cameron, so he'll come in at right back. But I've got other things I can look at in terms of other personnel. So the only one we've got a doubt on in terms of injury is Mark Muniesta, who didn't train today. So we're going to have to check on him just to make sure that he's an option tomorrow. Apart from that, it's long-term injuries. Glenn Whelan, Robert Hughes, Peter Odemwingie, they're still missing.
And just finally for me, the Manchester derby, I'm just asking, has the axis of power changed somewhat since you were a United player?
Well, good question. I think certainly City had a major player, quite clearly, and maybe United are in a period of transition, and they're having to rejuvenate their playing squad, and they're having to spend exceptional amounts of money to do that. So maybe City have already gone through that process and they're a little bit more settled in that regard. But in terms of the game itself, tough one to call, because City at this moment in time seem to be struggling for a little bit of form. United possibly and improving in terms of their confidence level. So tough one to call, but we'll have to wait and see.
Cheers, mate.
Okay, thanks. He went over on his ankle. I did it yesterday, a little bit sore today to train, but he went out with the physios and he's quite confident that he'll be okay. But until the morning, we'll have to check on him. We won't know. Yeah, Victor's okay. Yeah.
Saka's obviously the one being banging in the goals for West Ham. He seems like a bit of a bargain. Was he somebody that you were aware of at all?
Well, there's loads of names thrown out there. You've got to take the plunge, and obviously we were able to get Mam Diouf in, and we pursued other targets. He wasn't one that was high up, just because that wasn't one of the priorities in terms of what he could provide. But he's done really well. I didn't know a great deal about him, to be perfectly honest, and they're always a risk until you bring them to the league. You're never quite sure how they're going to deal with the physicality of the Premier League. But credit to him, he's done exceptionally well, and got good pace, good ability in the air as well, a real threat. So he's done really well. I've been very, very impressed with him.
You mentioned cheating there. Gary Monk obviously didn't get charged. Were you disappointed with that?
Well, we maybe that word is allowed to be used by ourselves. It seems to be that the FA has vindicated what was said, so maybe that is an adjective we can use now.
Is it set a bit of a dangerous precedent?
I think he may well have done, yeah.
And Mark, could you get the latest on Glenn Whelan's recovery?
Glenn is where he is. He's been out on the pitch with the physios, just walking, just trying to get blood around the injury, but broken bones heal in their own time. So he's still 3-4 weeks away, I would suggest. So I would imagine you're inquiring about the Irish game, but I'd be very surprised if he's available, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, because he's made the provisional squad, he was named amongst that.
Which surprised me somewhat, but I know it's a big squad, so they're probably just covering all eventualities, but I'd be very surprised if he's available.
You're obviously close with Roy Keane, would you be perhaps talking to him about leaving him?
Well, maybe nearer the time, but it's, the guy leading into a big game like that, I don't think he'll be fit. That's the top and bottom of it. He's got a broken leg, for goodness sake.
The supporters are really quite upset about the treatment that Ryan Shawcross is getting in the media. And you're probably aware that within 5 minutes of the match finishing, there was a picture of Ryan in a newspaper holding somebody. Is there anything that you feel that you can do, or the club can do, to get what seems to us as supporters, I am a Stoke supporter, a crusade against Shawcross?
We are speaking to people we feel have got influence and need to be told about our feelings about the situation, because we feel quite strongly about it. So that's ongoing. I think possibly being aware that I've said probably more in a media conference today, but I think sometimes the media can help in that regard, and sometimes you've got to use it to get the message that we're not going to stand for it and we think it's unfair. So
You were a fairly tough footballer. The energy you had on a football
fairly
field
tough.
is ridiculous to the one you have here in a press conference. How is it affecting Ryan? I feel he'll be okay, but it must have an effect on the team.
Well, that was what our concern was, and I'm sure Ryan will be fine. But if it goes on any longer, then it's detrimental to any player. If constantly the way that they play is being questioned wrongly in our view. So we've made our feelings known to the people that we think need to know that we're unhappy about it, and we'll see how it progresses. But we need to stop it, I feel.
Have you made your feelings known about Peter Crouch, the way he's being pulled and pushed around in the box, particularly all the shirt pulling and everything?
Well, there is those situations, but listen, I'm not advocating that it should stop and it shouldn't be allowed at any level. I mean, it's part and parcel of the British game. You want contact, you want people competing, but sometimes when it's just maybe the level that is allowed against some of our players, namely Peter, who doesn't, we feel, get a fair crack of the whip, maybe just because of his stature and his style, and he very rarely goes down to the ground to try and win fouls. So maybe he doesn't get his fair share when possibly he deserves more than he gets. But yeah, I think we've been aware for a long time about that situation, but it doesn't show any signs of changing anytime soon, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
Okay.